welcome to Cricket Chinwag. The final is done. The match is won. So Anand, your feelings about the final? Was it to be there in what people are saying is the biggest crowd in T20 cricket history? The atmosphere must have been electric.
The final was not the most competitive game beyond a certain point. There was a one-sidedness to it because India played to their full potential. And you always expect in a tournament, you hope like hell that it's the most competitive game because so much has been invested in it. Atmosphere perhaps was less charged in the final because it was New Zealand that India was facing. Because New Zealand is a team that everyone seems to like all the neutrals will get behind New Zealand. If it was in England or Australia, there would be people even from other countries, especially other Asian countries, who would have got right behind India and would have perhaps liked to have seen England or Australia stutter a little bit or even fail. But with the case of New Zealand, there's players who've done really well. There's players who have conducted themselves in a way that just endears themselves to fans around the world. So while the Narendra Modi Stadium was pumped up and there was a good crowd in simply because they opened the gates early. Ricky Martin was an unusual choice. Most people thought for being a headliner for the entertainment ahead of a final, given that he's not exactly currently relevant with the young crowd, but the audience seemed to take to him a lot. So that set things up really nicely. And India being put into bat is another thing that worked completely in favor of generating an atmosphere because no matter what you say, crowds, especially in India, love their batsmen much more than their bowlers. And when Abhishek Sharma got going, he got short balls and he took them on consistently. I think that was a mistake from New Zealand's bowlers as well. It is not the kind of surface in which you could really rush batsmen or intimidate them. Uh, you have to question some of the tactics that New Zealand employed on the day.
Was it a mistake for New Zealand to win the toss and bat? Because the groundsman had apparently said that he expected a very high scoring game. He had said very openly. Why would any team want to take the risk of chasing 230 plus, which was likely if India batted? What's your view on that, Anand?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question about New Zealand's tactics. I think team selection is the first one to leave out Cole McConkey, the off spinner, after his success in the last match and India's struggles at the top of the order against quality off spin, leaving him out in favor of Duffy, Jacob Duffy, the seam bowler, was a very, very questionable decision. I mean, you want to have a specialist off spinner bowling, even if the conditions aren't favoring the slow bowlers, and especially when it's batting friendly surfaces because you want someone who can do something through the air, who can deceive the batsman with loop and flight. And they didn't have that. They didn't have that up front, which I think, if nothing else, gave India's openers a serious confidence boost. And choosing to put India in on that surface was also a very, very borderline call. New Zealand had their reasons for it, but that said, uh, there seemed no real justification to put in a powerhouse batting lineup like India on that surface. Because once there's 220 on the board, even if that is on paper a par score, it becomes very, very difficult to chase simply because you need every small margin to go in your favor. You need every little slice of luck to back you up. Whereas you run the serious risk of having a few bad overs and then conceding 250, which is precisely what happened. And similarly, you give yourself that opportunity to use the scoreboard pressure on top of whatever else you have. The old saying always was in a knockout game, in a crunch game, in a big final, runs on the board are worth much more than they are in a regular league phase game. Now, T20 cricket has changed that, and every team prefers to chase. But, balancing these two aspects, given what your strengths are, what the conditions are, and what the opposition are, is very, very crucial. And I think New Zealand did not execute well on the day, but they didn't also give themselves the best chance of succeeding by putting India into bat.
I think the thing that worked for India in the final was that they had three openers. And typically, if two of those openers click, India would be in a winning position. In this case, all three clicked. And it was carnage was always going to be on the cards if all three click, which rarely happens, really. Given the kind of risks they take, uh, it was just amazing. And then there was this spectacular fall that happened near the end before, when Jimmy Neesham took 3 wickets in an over. Suddenly, Hardik Pandya couldn't get the ball away. Suddenly, Tilak Varma couldn't score runs, which is very strange. It was very strange to see, as if the pitch suddenly lost its bite for the batsman, that is. And then Dube again took off. I mean, it is one of the. Dube is such an underrated player. He repeatedly produces big hitting innings under pressure. In, in fact, people won't remember now in the 2024 final Kohli had when Kohli was playing his losing innings, he came and he struck 27 of 16 near the end, which was the highest strike rate for anyone who reached double figures in the Indian innings and played a big role in taking India to 176. Even here in this World Cup, in the game against the West Indies, for example, in the second last over, striking those two fours against West Indies under severe pressure. The 43 of 25 he made in the semi-final. And here, when Pandya and Tilak are not being able to score, this guy scores 26 of 8 runs near the end of the innings. He is the reason why India hasn't missed somebody like Dhoni or even Rinku Singh at his best. What are your views on Dube? Do you think he's highly underrated?
I think some of us have rated Shivam Dube very, very highly for a long time now. He has been underrated in the sense that nobody has quite known how to count his value as a batsman when he is not required to bowl. He made his name initially as someone who could take on the spinners and hit them from the word go. He didn't need a ball or two to settle in, which is all the time we get in T20 cricket anyway. He could launch the spinners into the stands from the time he walked out to the middle. And this is how he made his name initially in T20 cricket. And there was some concerns about how he was playing the short ball. And I think taking it on, blindly was a mistake that he made. But now he has adapted and he knows which shots he can do to get himself out of a tricky situation. If there's a bit of bounce on the pitch and there's enough pace from the short bowlers to threaten his rib cage consistently. That hardly happened in his World Cup, where every time he walked out in the middle, all he looked to do was try and increase the momentum for India. If they got a good start, he kicked it up one level. If things were faltering a little, he put the pressure back on the bowlers so that the other batsmen playing alongside him could also come into the picture in a much more positive manner. And Dube, with his bowling, it's only going to get better. Bowling in T20 cricket, especially in these kind of pitches that the World Cup was played on, is really a fool's errand and it's really a tough, tough ask. So, someone like him, whose bowling is always going to be his second string, will struggle a bit with that. But if the team understands his value and he's only used as a bowler where required, even just as a floating batsman, coming in at number 6, number 3, number 5, number 7, wherever required, he's worth his weight in gold.
And what did you think of Samson? Samson's innings, 3 consecutive 80 plus innings. It's just amazing in knockout games, back to back.
Now, what else can you say about Sanju Samson? I mean, the kind of pressure that he was in coming back into the team was immense, and it's something that only really he can speak to. I mean, anyone can say that the team had confidence in him, that the coaching staff had confidence in him. Gautam Gambhir has said that he was always batting well in the nets, so it was only a matter of time before he came good. All of this is true, but when you don't score runs, and that's your primary responsibility, and you're batting at the top of the order in a T20 match, the best time to bat, if you don't get runs, the pressure is going to build. You are going to put some amount of pressure on yourself. And, I don't care what Sanju Samson says about his experience, about all that he's done, about being so ready to, you know, live out his dream. The lack of runs leading into this World Cup would have put pressure on him. So to overcome that once, twice, and then now it's a slightly different pressure. It's a shift in that now the expectations of him are sky high. And not just the expectations, but because he's such a popular figure, he's a cult figure, Sanju. Despite having played just about 40 odd internationals over the course of a 10-year career, he's got this own cult following and cult status, especially in South India, of course, in his native Kerala, but also in Tamil Nadu, where he will soon turn out for the Chennai Super Kings in the IPL. He's got a following that goes beyond the runs and wicket keeping and the achievements he has done on the field. He's a player who has the goodwill of his fans, and a lot of people want to see him come good. There's a certain thing about his game where he sets up like a more orthodox, old style player. He's not playing funky shots. He plays in a conventional way. His batting is the kind that is aesthetically very, very easy to appreciate for purists, but his strike rate makes him very, very relatable for the modern audiences as well. So there was a lot of pressure on him, but to his credit, and this shows the experience and strength of character and clarity of mind and understanding of the role that he had to play. All he did was bring the Sanju A game to the fore. And when he brings that game to the fore, all he needed was that little slice of luck. He tried to play this whip shot over the onside. He took a top edge, went over third man, and went all the way. On another day, that would have gone straight to the fielder. He would have been out early, and the story could have been quite different. In fact, even in the series leading up to this World Cup, he was dismissed just the same way once. But, you know, when you are dominating the opposition the way Sanju is, when you're keeping a cool head and playing your role for the team and making life easier for your fellow batsmen, you need a bit of luck as an opening batter. At all times, you need that luck, especially in a big final. And when Sanju had that luck, he made absolutely the most of it. I hope that these three innings dispels doubts in his mind more than anyone, more than his critics, coaches, selectors, the outside world, because he seems to have serious support within the cricketing system. Now the time is to kick on and make it count. It's a bit odd to be saying that about someone who's on the wrong side of 30, but his best years might well be ahead of him. In one day cricket, he certainly will be pushing for a place in the side. He will be looking also to somehow make it to the test team, because everyone wants to be a three format player and everyone wants to leave a legacy, and that's best done to test cricket. But here's the thing, he's already set down a legacy simply because he's scored in three knockout matches in a World Cup. There's people who've done it in two, maybe, but for someone to score in a virtual quarterfinal, in a semi final, and a final, basically carrying the team through the toughest phase, hasn't really happened across international teams in World Cups. So, in that sense, Sanju's legacy is secure. Maybe in that security, you'll see him bloom and have a much better career from here on.
So the thing about Sanju Samson that I found really fascinating in the game against the West Indies was the parallel I saw with the Jemima Rodriguez innings in the semi-final. It was that kind of an innings where he kind of played in a certain way in the beginning. Then the situation changed a bit. So he changed his game to suit the requirements of the situation. And then he again accelerated near the end. It was just a brilliant innings, the one against the West Indies, which was a run chase. The special thing about Jemima's innings was, of course, that she actually had grown tired after around the 33rd over, and it was very natural to actually get out at that point. But she kind of just kept the thing going. She did not consume balls. She just kept the thing going, and then again she accelerated as she found her strength back, her energy back. She willed herself to find her intensity again. That is what was really special about Samson's innings. And when somebody plays like that in the team, very often you find other members of the team also responding in a very motivated way to that. That happened in the women's game. It also happened in the West Indies game, where batsman after batsman came and did his bit and left. Did his bit, which was enough. Every one of them, Hardik Pandya, Dube came and hit those two fours during the crunch moment. When that happens, when this kind of a flow happens in a team, it usually is very hard for a team to lose from there in the matches to follow, which is what happened in the Women's World Cup. After the Jemima innings, the team played very cohesively and won. That is exactly what happened in the knockout games in this World Cup against England and against New Zealand. Every batsman did their bit. For Samson and Samson's role, what I'm really getting at is this: it's not just those 380 plus innings that Samson played. It is what he did to the team, the stability and the energy and the momentum he gave to the team. It is absolutely a remarkable performance. It is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, batting performance I can think of. This might be the greatest limited overs batting performance by a single batsman in the history of Indian cricket. To produce three back-to-back 80 plus innings, he top scored each time without compromising on strike rate and took India through. It is an absolutely legendary performance. And, he will be written in golden letters in the annals of Indian cricket. So, Anand, there were some people who said that India did not look like champions in this tournament. They faltered against South Africa. They were shaky against the US in their first match, and England ran them close. The expectation was that a team that was considered such strong favorites would win convincingly every time, but that really didn't happen in the early games, which is why the match against the West Indies became a virtual knockout. What's your view on that?
The turning point in this tournament was the match against South Africa. When India were beaten by 76 runs, bowled out for 110, I think what changed was the realization that they're trying to adapt to a World Cup. They're trying to play differently in a global tournament compared to what they did in bilateral series leading up to this event was not really working for them. So you need to adapt to conditions, you need to adapt to situations for sure, and playing a bilateral series, playing the fourth game of a bilateral series when you're already wrapped up the result is very different from playing a game where everything is on the line in a World Cup. But somehow you need to be able to keep the focus on your processes and keep the focuses on executing your skills in the manner that will just benefit the team the best. That's much easier said than done. But I think what happened after that South Africa game was the team realized that the high risk, high reward approach was the one that they needed to stick to as a batting unit. The video analysts put together a feature of all the things that the team had done right when they played most fearlessly, when they expressed themselves best, when the batsmen looked to make 250 and they didn't mind if they crashed and burned in the process. I think trying to make 170, 180 so they gave themselves a fighting chance was not the best approach. And they realized this and they reverted to type and they said, we're going to go hell for leather. And when they do that, you're going to get one big game like you did in the final. When Abhishek Sharma clicked, Sanju Samson clicked, Ishan Kishan chipped in, and you had crucial contributions. You know, the confidence of someone like a Shivam Dube refusing a single in the final over because he was confident that he was in the best place to take on the last ball of the innings. Tilak Varma doing his bit. Each player coming in and saying, look, I have this many balls. What's the most use I can make of these resources? I think everyone playing together meant that this batting unit was going to put up a huge score. And that it came in the final was just reward, I think, for all the hard work the team has put in leading to the tournament and building a unit that would play in the mold that the captain and coach wanted.
Actually, the fact is that the best World Cup winning teams drop a game or two on their way to the business end. In ODI World Cups, memorably in 83, okay, they were underdogs, but India lost 2 games. In Pakistan, they lost multiple games before they found their mojo. But you can argue that Pakistan were not the favorites in 1992. 1999, Australia were the favorites, and Australia did win the World Cup. But on their way, they lost to New Zealand and Pakistan. Australia in 2007, overwhelmingly the favorites, but they did drop a couple of games. India in 2011, they did drop a game against South Africa. Australia in 2015, they did drop a game against New Zealand. England in 2019, they lost to Sri Lanka and Australia in a league game. Australia in 2023, they were, in fact, they looked pretty shaky at the beginning of the World Cup. Then they came back and won spectacularly. I think champion teams have a tendency to rev up. They slowly get into their groove, and it is what they do in the tougher games that actually defines them. That is what India did in this game, because India was sublime in the knockout games here. In both the knockout games, they were absolutely brilliant. In fact, reverse is interesting also, that a team winning everything and losing in the knockouts. This has been India's story in recent times. 2023 World Cup is an example. The 2024 T20 World Cup should have also been that, but it is actually Bumrah and Hardik and Arshdeep who saved India. This is something that leads on to a very important point, which is that if you remember the 2024 final when India made 176, Kohli had actually played a spectacularly losing innings. It's not just because he made 76 or 59 balls, which is less than 130 strike rate in a total of 176. The blunder and the disaster there was that the best hitter in the side, Pandya, and the best finisher at the time, Jadeja, they did not get to bat because of his pace. They both played, I think, 2 balls in the end, each. If not for Akshar Patel, who made 47 of 31, and Dube, who also chipped in, India would have had a really pitiful total. And really, that was a losing innings by Kohli. Of course, South Africa needed 26 of 24 balls. The match was won. And then they lost it because of the three bowlers, the 3 overs that were bowled back to back by Bumrah started it, Hardik continued it, then again Arshdeep finished it. That brilliance, that Indian bowling actually was the man of. They should have got the Player of the Match award, and if you had to give it to one, you would have to give it to Bumrah. Kohli being given the man of the match in that final actually shows how low IQ cricket is, and it is absolutely correct that Kohli was removed from the T20 team post that. Indian cricket changed its ethos after that very spectacularly. It was a turning point for India in T20. And the selfless aggression that Rohit had shown, top of the order, which is the big contribution he made to the Indian white ball team, that was now adopted by the whole team, baseball style. And Sky's team took T20 to different heights. I mean, the stats say it anyway, not losing a single bilateral series since 2024, winning 41 of 50 matches, despite playing so fearlessly and taking risks. This was embracing of true potential, perhaps for the first time in Indian cricket on this scale. If it actually changed the world game. It changed the T20 format, what this Indian team did. And it was completely justified, completely fitting that this team won the World Cup. So, Anand, how would you say this Indian team changed the world game?
Oh, I think the most significant way in which this team has changed 2020 cricket is that they believe in two things that have been set out as mantras for a long time. But saying one thing and actually living it and practicing it day in and day out are two different things. The first is that milestones don't matter. Now, this team is saying that it doesn't. We are not going to count how many 50s you made or how many hundreds you made. We are going to see what contribution you made towards taking the team to the target, which is winning games. Now, in that end, you look at someone like Sanju Samson, whose place was not guaranteed in the side, who wasn't even in the 11 when he started off. 97 not out, his first big innings. He ran out of runs to score and overs, perhaps at that time. Understandable. 89 in the next game. He could have tempered himself and looked to make 100. 89 again in the final. Another opportunity to try and make it to three figures, but that's not what happened. When he was on 89, if the ball was there to be hit, if there was an opportunity to play a big shot and get a 4 or a 6, he went for that. This means that, he's feeling so secure in himself, in his place in the side, that he doesn't need to back that up with numbers. This is like someone having actual learning of a subject rather than falling back on the safety of a degree or an external validation or qualification, to feel confident in their knowledge and their experience and their work. And that's happened with this team. That's the first point. The second thing I think is this high risk, high reward approach that Gambhir has talked about. He says there's no point trying to aim for 170, 180, because on a bad day, you're going to fail doing that anyway. And even if you get 160, 170, if the conditions favor the batsman completely, as they often do in T20 cricket, then your bowling unit is going to be under pressure to defend that. Whereas if you go for 220, you might end up with 250 quite a fair few times. You will crash and burn once in a while to a double digit score or even to something in the low hundreds. And you will lose that game comprehensively in a one sided manner. But most of the time, you will put up big scores. Not only will you put up big scores, you will put the pressure constantly on the opposition. Now, this is something, again, that the team may have lost track of initially, but embraced fully by the end of it. In these two ways, they have changed the way T20 cricket has played. So in that sense, this has become like Johan Cruyff's total football kind of setup with the Netherlands football team back in the day. This has become total batting in that sense because it's just from ball one to the last ball. Everyone is focused on trying to get the team to 250.
So, Jasprit Bumrah got the Man of the Match award here. Of course, he was brilliant, but he was not the Man of the Match here because by the time he came on to bowl, the match was anyway half lost because of the massive score. And Bumrah took the majority of his wickets near the end of the innings anyway. Samson was the man of the match again. He should have got his third consecutive Man of the Match award and the Man of the Series award, but it's okay because Bumrah was the man of the match in the 2024 final. But Kohli ridiculously got that. What a player to have in your side, Jasprit Bumrah. Perhaps the greatest Indian cricketer ever, because we've never had a player who almost indisputably is called the world's best player. Even Tendulkar and in his absolute prime was never called that. No Indian cricketer has ever been called the greatest player in the world. But I think 99% of even international cricketers say that Bumrah is the best bowler. And, if you look at the figures, he is the best multi-format bowler in the world by a mile. And of course, he's India's greatest bowler, not just fast bowler. He's India's greatest bowler of all time. What are your views on him, on Bumrah's place in Indian cricket history?
I think Jasprit Bumrah's legacy was quite well set even before this World Cup began. I mean, his record is just phenomenal across formats. But more than his record, his ability to read a game situation, his ability to bring himself into the game and impose himself on the opposition, whether it is bowling 3 overs up front when it's needed, whether it is coming back in the middle to shift the pressure back onto the opposition, to stem the flow of runs or to pick up wickets when a batsman is on song, or even coming back in the death overs like he did when defending the targets. His overs are overs that the opposition kind of discounts as something they have at hand. Not because they want to play him out, but because it's impossible to get under some of those Yorkers and hit them out of the ground. With most other bowlers, it would be risky to even attempt 6 Yorkers. It just takes so much out of a fast bowler, but Bumrah has it in him to bowl not just the regulation conventional fast Yorker, but also the slower ball Yorker with a roll of the wrist, which is almost undetectable. So he's able to bowl 6 pinpoint Yorkers coming back in his second spell or third spell even in a game and landed just on the target, which means there's no way for the batsman to get under the ball and get the elevation they need to clear the infield. And the maximum you get is a single, or if you get an edge, you might get a streaky two. Otherwise, Bumrah gives you so much control that opposition batsmen feel that the target that they're chasing is not off 20 overs really, but is more like 17 or 18. Every single time the ball has been thrown to him by Surya Kumar Yadav, he's done the job for the team. I'm not entirely sure how he keeps his mind so clear that this doesn't become a burden on him, but rather he's still smiling and looking at this as an opportunity. For Indian cricket now, all the hope should be is that his physical fitness holds up. There's a lot of strain on his body. His workload is managed very, very carefully and scientifically. He is one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time. There's no doubt about that. The numbers speak for themselves. The situation is now is for India to celebrate him, value him, and get the most out of him in the years to come.
Oh, Anand, why did it take so long for the presentation ceremony? People just seem to be, all the players and all the officials, etc. They just seem to be waiting. The crowd, everybody was just waiting uh, for the ceremony to happen. I mean, the amount of time it took it just seemed completely illogical. Were they waiting for Modi to fly down now that India had definitely won?
Now, when the presentation ceremony starts in any of these tournaments is real doozy for most people. Sometimes before you realize it, things have begun. The ICC has shifted things a little bit in this tournament in that they very quickly do the player of the match. That one is adjudicated and decided straight after the game goes. But after a final, you do expect that it'll take some time because the setup for the presentation ceremony itself takes long, and the winning team often needs a long moment in the dressing room to celebrate together and kind of have their moment and just soak it all in before they come out. That said, it did seem to take an inordinate amount of time for the setup to happen. I'm not entirely sure exactly why that happened. There were no reasons officially given to anyone, but the fans also stayed at the ground. So I suspect, while there was impatience for many of us, for the fans, they didn't really mind the wait. On television, it might have been perhaps a bit more annoying because there would have been a lot more advertisements to suffer through. But in the ground, there wasn't that impatience about how long the ceremony was taking to get set up. And then even the distribution of medals, all the awards that were given out, I think it was something that was hugely enjoyed by the crowd, which was, for the record, something in the range of 86,000, short of 87,000. So technically not a full house. Nobody knows exactly how much the capacity of the Narendra Modi Stadium is. We've heard various different official numbers from 100,000 to 110,000 to 132,000, but we've never had a crowd that's stacked up to either of these numbers. Was it a full house? I don't think anyone can give you an answer to that definitively.
And since you attended the press conference, any observations that you have, any thoughts from the press conference?
The press conferences are always interesting when a team has won a tournament. In the words of Steve Archibald, the Spurs footballer, team spirit is an illusion glimpse in the aftermath of victory. Now, that's a very cynical view to take, in that saying that, team spirit's not really a thing, except that when a team does well, everyone suddenly has this feeling of camaraderie and loves each other to bits. But there was a genuine enjoyment of each other's success. That was visible in Gautam Gambhir's press conference alongside Surya Kumar Yadav. The two have worked very well as a team. Since Surya took over as T20 captain 2 years ago, India have not lost a bilateral series. They won the Asia Cup. They've won the World Cup. So there's clearly something that's working very well between the two. They kind of explained it in that Surya said that, having played under Gambhir at the Calcutta Knight Riders for 3 or 4 years, they were on the same page even before they began this association as coach and captain. Surya said that when team selections happened, there was rarely an argument. When squad selections happened, they tended to agree on 14 of the 15 players that were going to be in the mix and just needed to have some conversation about the 15. So even taking that with a pinch of salt, they clearly work very well together. I think what's helped is that Surya has understood what he needs to do as captain much better on the job. He explained how, the need is to come down to the level of each of the players, to listen to them and to ask them what they want to get out of this team, how this team should be run. He's not trying to be a father figure or an elder brother to even the youngest players in the team. He's allowing them to be themselves. He's allowing the team as a group to mold, their aims, aspirations, ambitions, and he's just helping them come together. And Gambhir in the background is, bit of enforcer, bit of empowerment. I think he's been good at that role. A lot of the decisions he took leading up in the setup to this tournament, in building this team, were questioned. He was under pressure a lot for the results in Test match cricket, but in white ball cricket, the results have been exceptional for this Indian team. There was another interaction in the post-match press conferences where Abhishek Sharma and Ishan Kishan came up and had a chat. And in that, again, you could see this sense of a group of young players having fun together. There was a question about, how these players came back from tough times and challenging times. And, both of them had a laugh. And when one wanted to answer it, Abhishek said, look, yeah, I've scored runs in the final, but I've had a tough time leading up to it. And Ishan was like, you just had like a couple of weeks to do. I was out of the team for 2 years almost. And they had a good laugh about it. There was another time later on in the interaction, and Abhishek was visibly cramping and wanted to quickly finish his media duties and step off. And Ishan Kishan was quick to rib him, saying, "Yeah, you've batted for a long time today. After a while, previously you were hardly at the crease for this long." So there was a genuine feeling of safety, security, and comfort within this, and I think that reflected in the post match interactions. And I think it's this is the moment for them to enjoy, because the schedule is so packed. They'll be back on the road soon enough after the IPL with much more challenges to take on.
So we are at the end of this. The world went into a tailspin during the course of this tournament. The brightest spot was when international cricket captains initiated by Greg Chappell spoke out for Imran Khan in jail. Hopefully it made a difference, or it will make a difference, at least in the way he's treated. It is now fairly obvious why Trump has made no effort to free Imran Khan, like there were rumors initially that he would. Because if Imran had been out, no Muslim leader in the world would have made more noise than him about the attacks on Iran. That would have been very inconvenient to both Israel and Trump. Anyway, let us hope sanity prevails and the war ends soon, because if it doesn't, the imminent threat of nuclear war initiated by Israel has never been stronger. In that case, we got to see a true demolition job in the last World Cup cricket match of our lives. How poetic, is it not?
If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Cricket Chinwag is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and through RSS on your favorite podcast platform.